everyone. So we analyzed the positions of different linkage institutions on marijuana legalization. So linkage institutions exist to connect the country's citizens to government, and these can take the form of like media or interest groups or political parties. So the role of political parties is to have different people who share the same beliefs come together to make their common goals a reality. So government officials join political parties and try to get as many of their candidates nominated for office in order to accomplish their goals. And in the United States, political parties rely on citizens joining and supporting their causes so that they can get funding for I analyzed the opinions of various Republican candidates, both conservative and liberal, during the GOP debate that took place on September 16, 2015. They argued against one another about their positions on marijuana legalization. This debate shows that not everyone in a political party will have the same beliefs, and that the Republican Party is becoming increasingly more divided due to more Republicans becoming more liberal. However, a majority of the candidates had a conservative stance and were therefore mostly against marijuana legalization. Firstly, I analyzed the point of view and word choice of the various candidates. The traditional Republican stance is conservative, so this means that they tend to lean towards opposition and change, so they were mostly opposed to the legalization of marijuana. So Carly Fiorina, Chris Christie, and Jeb Bush took the conservative stance, while Rand Paul was the only one who spoke liberally. Rand Paul began by indirectly calling Jeb Bush a hypocrite for smoking weed in high school and yet still taking a anti-marijuana stance. This word choice is almost an attack on Bush, since the word hypocrite has a very strong negative connotation, and it's also an ad hominem fallacy because it was more of like a personal attack on Bush as opposed to like supporting his argument of like why marijuana should be legal. Jeb Bush in turn admitted that Paul was talking about him, although Bush's name was not said. Bush claimed that he wanted to make it easier for Paul, and he was like sort of trying to victimize himself by saying like, oh, he was talking about me, like I just wanted to make it easier for him. I felt like he was trying to get sympathy, sort of. And so Rand Paul repeatedly used the words young mother and young child, and he was talking about a child who needs medical marijuana, and he was like sort of using these like words like young mother, young child, like they're gonna get separated if marijuana is illegal, and he would like tell the candidates like you're gonna be separating young mothers and young children if you make marijuana illegal. So that was sort of like his word choice was again trying to like use like a sympathy story to like get people to go against the other candidates. Secondly, I analyzed the reasoning of the candidates and like the reasoning behind their arguments. So Rand Paul claimed that making medical marijuana illegal would equal putting people in jail, citing the same young child whose parents would apparently get put in jail for having him use medical marijuana. This is a logical fallacy because making marijuana illegal does not necessarily equal people going to jail, although like there might be correlation. So this is a hasty generalization because like making medical marijuana illegal does not equal young mothers getting put in jail. So he used the same story of this child to later attack Christie, saying that by making marijuana illegal, he would be putting young mothers in jail since cannabis would be illegal. There was also an ad hominem when Paul told Bush, "Kids who have privilege like you don't go to jail, but poor kids do." So basically, he was saying that there's like a problem with like the classes, and poor people will get put in jail for marijuana, while like richer kids like Jeb Bush was when he smoked marijuana in high school wouldn't get put in jail. So this was like a personal attack on Bush because him saying like you wasn't necessary, and it makes it a personal matter as opposed to something that supports his argument. And he said it's hypocritical that Bush wants to put poor people in jail, and he was sort of like attacking Bush, saying like you're gonna put poor people in jail, and yeah. Carly Fiorina tried to strengthen her argument by citing personal experience. She said that she's against marijuana because her and her husband buried a child to drug addiction, but she doesn't make it clear which drug her child was addicted to, and it doesn't really support her argument because a drug like marijuana is completely different from a drug, say like heroin, that her child was probably addicted to. And she used a statistic saying that 2/3 of the people in America's prisons are there for nonviolent offenses, um, which makes it seem more credible, but it doesn't really support her argument because there are many nonviolent crimes that people could be going to jail for besides like possession of marijuana. So it is a statistic. It might make it seem more reliable, but it's really not. And Chris Christie then went on to say that he's pro-life and that the life of someone in prison for marijuana is just as important as the life of a fetus, and therefore he is for rehabilitation and does not think that gateway drugs should be legal. So he's against marijuana legalization, and this argument really didn't make much sense to me at all. I don't really see how you can relate abortion to marijuana. They're just like so different. His comparison didn't make any sense to me. It was like a logical fallacy. My personal reflection. My opinion really isn't influenced by any of these beliefs, although they were very different. My opinion isn't really influenced at all. My opinion is sort of right now, I don't know. I feel like there's many things that I've heard about that have gone, that like kind of weren't talked about during the GOP debates, so I don't feel like I could get an informed opinion by watching those debates. I felt that all of the arguments were very illogical and very biased. They didn't really present any facts. They didn't really say, excuse me, why marijuana was good, why marijuana was bad. It was just sort of like these generalizations that I didn't really feel like supported the argument logically. So I've concluded that I think that political parties, for the most part, are beneficial to the American political process. But I would like to see different parties besides Republican and Democrat. But I feel like that everyone in a political party has to have like a very straightforward belief that's consistent with the parties in order to be elected. So I noticed like that, more Republican beliefs are becoming more divided. So I found that very interesting since, like, for the most part, all Republicans share almost the same beliefs and all Democrats share the same beliefs. So in short, I think that this makes the process sort of dishonest, and many people will speak whatever they believe to give them votes. So I think that political parties could be more beneficial if it was easier for third parties.
Form of marijuana laws is the leading interest group leading the charge for the legalization of marijuana. They support the removal of all criminal charges that can be associated with marijuana. NORML is unique in the aspect that it backs up legislation making marijuana the lowest priority for law enforcement and government resources. They also commonly identify themselves as the voice of the masses of marijuana smokers whose voices go unheard. Interest groups essentially exist for the purpose of swaying the opinions of the masses. They use numerous resources to complete this goal, which are not always truthful. I analyzed NORML as many marijuana-related advocacy groups do. NORML remains extremely liberal in their policies and ideology. They are one of the most outspoken groups in terms of any marijuana-related legislation. One of the sources I analyzed was a press release from NORML's website in regards to how the federal government cannot punish marijuana dispensaries that meet state laws. The article was about a dispensary in California that had been shut down in 2011 by the federal authorities while it met California state laws. The point of view in itself presents a bias within the article. In this case, even words such as forbid and phrases such as federal actions that result in the closing of dispensaries substantially impede patients' access to marijuana and thus are forgiven, the court opined, opinion, which pre-stated text and portray it out of context are an example of bias in the text. I believe this article presents a liberal point of view in that it is rejoicing at the rejection of laws that are part of a larger conservative agenda. In the article, Normal, which is essentially attempts to function as a news agency, is a tactic used to make the article seem more reliable. Yet, they do seem to cite some government and judicial sources, which gives it some reliability. I also looked at one of Normal's commercials, which explicitly demand the legalization of marijuana. The political agenda of this ad, while extremely liberal, still calls on President Obama to legalize marijuana in order to tax it and create millions of jobs. The fact that they are calling out the president, who is already very liberal, shows just how liberal they are. The video attempts to gain accountability through the personas of the featured characters. It starts out with people naming their fields, including doctors, lawyers, and representatives. Then they each state an argument or opinion against marijuana laws. One character in particular attempts to use an emotional appeal to the audience by stating, "Making me and my family go in a courtroom is already enough when I am fighting through chemotherapy." This claim is trying to captivate off the subject's cancer in order to prove a point. This source exhibits a clear bias because it is based off the individual's personal beliefs and at no time states any facts but attempts to acknowledge statements as facts. This weakens their argument because it essentially shows that the ad is just expressing the message of Normal without any factual information. Normal, while it fulfills the role of being a voice for the millions of people who use and or in favor of marijuana legislation, fails to present accurate information, instead opting to manipulate their audiences by using different tactics, such as representing opinions as facts. Yet I semi-agree with their arguments. I believe it would be very beneficial to legalize and tax marijuana and use law enforcement resources for more pressing issues. Normal's opinion is beneficial to our political process because it allows people to gain their own opinion and perspective in issues such as marijuana.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.